Hello students, in the present video we are going to talk about natural products. This syllabus has been prescribed for the 5th semester B.Sc students under Tumkur University. In the present video we are going to talk about carbohydrates. Before going into this one, let us first understand what should be the learning outcomes after this. In this topic, we are going to study about 4 different types of natural products, that is carbohydrates, terpenes, alkaloids and pheromones. Natural products are those substances which are obtained from natural sources. After going through this video, you should be able to understand what are carbohydrates and also get to know about their classification, their general properties. We will also learn about the Haworth structure and also the open chain structures of the glucose and fructose. So let us have a bit of recap about this particular topic. So we all know nature is a major source of all the things that we use. Maybe the food that we consume and the biomolecules that we are using. Biomolecules means it may be carbohydrates, amino acids, DNA, RNA, etc. They all play a significant role in our lives in one way or the other. Let's understand what are carbohydrates. By definition, we can define them as polyhydroxyaldehydes or polyhydroxyketones, or the compounds that yield these on hydrolysis. Hydrolysis is a process wherein we break down certain substances by the addition of water, either in presence of acid or a base or even an enzyme. So in this case, carbohydrates can be defined as polyhydroxy compounds, means they contain more number of hydroxy groups, that is OH groups. These carbohydrates have been broadly classified into 2 groups as sugars and non-sugars. And in sugars, there is further classification as monosaccharides, oligosaccharides, etc. Monosaccharides are those compounds which do not undergo further hydrolysis, giving smaller units. So these are actually the monomers of carbohydrates. They are further divided into aldoses and ketoses. Aldoses are those carbohydrates which have aldehyde as the functional group. Ketoses are those carbohydrates which have ketone as the functional group. A broad classification, as I said, carbohydrates have been divided into sugars and non-sugars. Non-sugars are also known as polysaccharides, which we are going to study in detail in later some other videos. Sugars can be further divided into monosaccharides and oligosaccharides. Monosaccharides are known as either aldoses and ketoses. Aldoses can be further divided into trioses, tetroses, pentoses, hexoses, etc. based on the number of carbons that may be present. Similarly, ketoses can also be trioses, tetroses, pentoses and hexoses. So the classification is based on the functional group here as aldoses and ketoses, and here the classification is based on the number of carbons that may be present. Now the other part of the sugars are oligosaccharides. Oligosaccharides usually contain 2 to 10 number of monosaccharide units. Based once again on the number of monosaccharide units, please mind it is monosaccharide units. If 2 sugar units, 2 monosaccharides are present, they are called as disaccharides. Examples we all know sucrose and maltose, cellobiose, etc. Similarly, if 3 monosaccharide units are present, then we can call them as trisaccharides. And this goes on and so forth, like 4 if they are present, then tetrasaccharides, etc. So this is a broad classification. And finally, we have polysaccharides, which will contain more than 10 monosaccharide units. Now oligosaccharides, as I said, they'll have 2 to 9 sugar units and they are divided here as shown. Non-sugars are the polysaccharides. They can have a huge number of monosaccharide units. Example for polysaccharides are starch, cellulose, glycogen, etc. Now when you come to the glucose structure, glucose is the simplest and most important molecule that is studied extensively. It has been studied, its structure has been elucidated, and this is the open chain structure that has been given to it or assigned to it. So we can have D-glucose or beta D-glucose, alpha D-glucose, and this is the Haworth structures of alpha D-glucose. Here it is in the ring form and we can call this as pyranose, beta D-glucopyranose. Fructose open chain structure as well as the Haworth structure. In the Haworth structure, we have here depicted the furanose structure. Now let us come to the definition of epimers. Epimers are those compounds, those molecules of sugar which have opposite configuration at only one particular stereogenic center. It could be any of these carbons, then they can be called as epimers, whereas the rest of the molecule remains the same. Let me give you an example here. This is D-glucose. We all have seen the configuration or the arrangement of OH group, hydroxyl group goes like this. There is an aldehyde group and a primary alcohol group here. We have OH, H, OH and OH on 2, 3, 4 and 5 carbons respectively. Now D-mannose is an epimer of glucose at the carbon 2. That means the whole of the molecule remains same, only this OH, this is changing at carbon 2. You can see here, this is on the right hand side, OH is on the right hand side, whereas here it is on the left hand side. Now to the same glucose, galactose is epimer at 4. That means the rest of the molecule remains the same, only on the 4th carbon the OH groups have been on the opposite directions. Only one particular stereogenic center. So these are known as epimers. So let me tell you one more time. Epimers are those molecules which have the opposite configuration at only one particular stereogenic center. Example, D-mannose, D-glucose or D-glucose and D-galactose. Okay. Now let us come to the meaning of reducing and non-reducing sugars. Reducing sugars are those sugars which have a free aldehyde or a keto group. So we all know that these sugars can reduce failing solution also as well as tolerance reagent. Now reducing and non-reducing sugars, they play a significant role in our life because sometimes some sugars like sucrose is not a reducing sugar, it is a non-reducing sugar, whereas glucose is a reducing sugar. That means some of them they will have free aldehyde group, but when this gets reacted or forms a hemiacetal or a hemiketal, at that time the aldehyde or a keto group will not be free, then they can be non-reducing sugars. Now the question that can be expected on these topics are like the definition for carbohydrates, and you can define aldoses and ketoses. What are reducing and non-reducing sugars? An example. And classification, a broad classification of carbohydrates, and Haworth structure for glucose and fructose. It may be pyranose or furanose. Glucose exists only in pyranose, fructose exists in both pyranose and furanose structure. Thank you for watching, and these are the references. Thank you.